What is up, Sopranos fans? Kino here, and we are back with the 5th day of Sopranos September. Today we're looking at the 5th episode of Season 6, Mr. and Mrs. John Sacrimoni Request. Now, I was going to make a joke about that title being a mouthful, but I couldn't decide whether to make it a Ginny Sack joke or a Vito joke. So let's just drop the whole thing. The episode opens with Johnny Sack in prison awaiting trial. He petitions the court to allow him to attend his daughter Allegra's upcoming wedding. They allow him to, but they force him to pay for the security detail that's going to be escorting him the whole time. They place a bunch of restrictions on him, and they force him to pay for the cost of all of it out of his own pockets. Also, this isn't really related to anything, but I just noticed that his daughter Catherine is the mother from How I Met Your Mother. This must have been one of her early roles. Meanwhile, Tony is finally returning to work. He has this new driver, this young, strong guy named Perry, kind of a hothead, gets into fights pretty easily. Now, Tony goes back to work, and he tries talking to the guys about his injury and, kind of connecting with them and explaining what's going on with him. But Silvio cuts him off because he's coming off as weak, and Silvio is trying to protect him from, exposing his weakness to all of his men. Because as the boss, he needs to display strength. Meanwhile, Phil comes down to see Tony, and he brings a message from John. Now, John wants Tony to take out Rusty. John's worried that Rusty will make another power play like he did with little Carmine, and he wants to nip it in the butt while he's in prison. Tony refuses, however. He's done enough favors for Johnny Sack, and it's time to set some limits, so he refuses the request. At the wedding, the U.S. Marshals have set up, metal detectors, and they're searching everyone who comes to the wedding. Meadow is really disgusted at the show of force from the government, and this is one of the things that's going to convince her to pursue a career in law rather than medicine. Tony is forced to step out of line and remove his shoes, but while he's doing so, he almost passes out. And again, this makes him look weak in front of everyone, and further cements that he's not the strong guy that he used to be. At the after party to the wedding, Tony and Johnny Sack finally reconnect. They haven't seen each other in person since John was arrested last season. And John asks Tony to do him a favor. He's in jail, he's in a really vulnerable position, and as a friend, he asks Tony to do him this favor and kill Rusty. Tony finally agrees to kind of placate John and keep Phil in line. But Christopher disagrees with the decision, and he's really starting to question Tony's leadership, again because he's appearing so weak. Chris is acting disrespectful, and Tony can see that he's, losing his loyalty of his men. As the wedding wraps up, the feds arrive, and they make this big scene out of arresting John and taking him back to prison, and he starts to cry in front of everyone as they drag him away, and he's so distraught over, how his life has turned out. To Phil, it's an utter disgrace for a man to cry in front of other people, and he loses a lot of respect for Johnny Sack. So we're seeing both ends, both John and Tony here, are kind of losing the respect of their men. After the wedding, Vito leaves his wife. He says he's going to make some collections, but he actually goes to a gay club instead. He's dressed up in this whole leather outfit, dancing and kissing with a guy. But while he's there, some other mobsters arrive at the club. They're there to collect from the owner, and they spot Vito, and they realize that, he's gay. Vito tries to play it off, say it was a joke, but they clearly don't believe him, and they leave. Worried that they might say something, he leaves home and checks into a hotel, because if anyone finds out he's gay, he's dead. He even goes so far as to call Silvio at 3 a.m., just calling to see if he heard anything, and Silvio's, confused why Vito's even calling him that late. But we can see Vito's very paranoid about being caught, and that's going to be a big plot point next episode. Meanwhile, Tony is concerned about his men starting to doubt him. He's worried that if he appears weak, they might even take him out. And he decides to assert his dominance with a show of force. So he intentionally provokes a fight with Perry. Perry didn't really do anything, but Tony ends up beating him to the ground and showing everyone that he's still this strong alpha male. However, when he goes to the bathroom, he collapses and starts puking in the toilet. And we can see that while he's still strong on the outside, or at least that's what he appears, on the inside he's still very weak. And that's definitely one of the themes of the show, is that, despite how Tony appears to everyone else at times, at his core, he's very weak and vulnerable and emotional. And that's the central conflict of his character, of how he balances those two sides to himself. But that is this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next Soprano log coming tomorrow. On the 5th day of Sopranos timber, my Gumar gave to me 5 onion rings, 4 calling cards, 3 French whores, 2 Tonys, and a Sopranos prequel movie. Special thank you to my patrons Hunter, Tommy Smith, Abdallah Alamari, George Jones, Russell, Sean, Graham, Rooftop, Rico Bellick, Heart of Markness, Broccoli, Isaiah, Placenta Juan, Logan, Clean, John Reyna, Lance Klump, Jesse Sterling, Andrew Stewart, James, Conchok Chofel, Obstacle Racing Media, Daz J. Kit, and William Lanson.